Well, I first heard about John Amanchukwu several months ago at a school because of a video that went viral of him at a school board meeting. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this fight.
Well, I come from a church that pushes the focus of fighting against cultural issues. But along with that issue also, we also address these problems as relates to critical race theory, gender theory, queer theory, intersectionality. All of these things we address at local school board meetings. And so I've gone viral maybe 8 times doing so. I've amassed over 180 million views. I'm partnering with TPUSA Faith and School Board Watch List to go to some of the busiest and wokest school boards in the country to speak out against these issues.
What has been, if you could articulate common themes as you've gone on and done this in school board districts across the country, can you see common modus operandi, common methodologies where you can kind of see the same thing plays out over and over again, regardless of where you go, once they're under that ideological or spiritual grip?
But I have to say this, Steve, and I don't mean to say this in a condescending way. We really need to pray for white liberals. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. The majority of the people who are pushing these ideologies that I see around the country, whether it's in California, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in New Jersey, Virginia, up in Loudoun County, where they're allowing children to self-identify as animals, you're seeing a steady flow of white liberals supporting ideologies that are against nature, that's against normative behaviors. And so we really need to pray about that. I'm oftentimes seeing as well that many parents are unaware about what's taking place and what's going on. Mm-hmm. They drop their kids off for nearly 7 to 8 hours. They treat, K through 12 education like a daycare, drop the kid off and you don't engage in what's going on. And so many children are being indoctrinated into things that their families really don't even support. We take them to church on Sunday morning for an hour or two, if that, and then we take them to school on Monday through Friday, and the kids are being inundated with ideologies that are against Scripture, that are against the family, and our kids are now confused. They don't know what to think. They don't know what to believe. Studies are showing that more and more children are beginning to lean towards the concepts of transgenderism and believing that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. All of these things are taking place in our government schools.
John, I'm not going to say this is a panacea, because when you're dealing with this kind of spiritual stronghold, man, the roots run deep. All right, you got to pull the thing out by the roots, okay? But just as a first step of progress, how much of a dent would we put into what you've witnessed if more dads, men, just made their presence more known in these districts and at these meetings?
I tell you what, man, you're really pulling up some roots by saying that. That question is the question of all questions. I believe that part of the reason why we don't see a lot of men speaking out at local school board meetings is because many men have become neutered by feminists. They have surrendered their voice. They feel as if to speak up and to address these issues and to be vocal and assertive and to use their testosterone. Oftentimes, those kind of men are labeled as having toxic masculinity. And then if a guy is, more reserved and quiet, then he's labeled as being a beta. And so men are confused today. They're on this pendulum swinging back and forth of not knowing what to do, how to respond, and what to say. But men are called to be protectors and providers. And if there's anyone that should be standing up for the sanctity of even womanhood, it ought to be men, because we are blessed and we are the recipients thereof. I am trying to bring about revival nationally in many ways, spiritually, through making sure that people understand what the Bible says and what God's truth supports, but also trying to get to the hearts of men in the culture and to remind them that you have a place, you have a role, you have a job. We can't just surrender education to the mama bears. We need the papa bears as well, speaking up on the front lines.
I mean, I'm a great admirer of Moms for Liberty as just one example. They do so much great work around the country, but I think the fact that it exists is also a shame to the men, right? To some degree,
Yes.
it is.
I would agree with that. Moms for Liberty does a wonderful job. I'm friends with Tiffany Justice. We've partnered together on some issues as relates to the school board meetings, and they're doing a great work. And you're right. Prophetically speaking, it says that men have abdicated their role and responsibility, that we have to have an organization called Moms for Liberty in the first place. But I'm for making sure men see clearly today, and they know that they have a job, they have a role, they have a task. And I'm seeing more and more men around the country begin to speak up. I receive emails weekly from men who are saying, hey, how do I get engaged? I want to do what you're doing. Or I saw your viral video in Temecula when you spoke out about the 10 things that Black students don't need in education. You know what? I want to do what you're doing. Can you give me some pointers? Can you give me some tips? So men are beginning to say, you know what, man, I can do this as well. I may not know all of the issues like John. I may not know how to properly put it in the same manner that he does, but I have a child that's in the public education system, and I want to address these issues as well.
Let's be very practical here. We got about 4 minutes left. Someone is listening right now, and they're a mom or a dad, and they're like, okay, we've got to get involved. Or maybe I'm not even a mom or dad, but maybe I once was a mom, and I'm still one. My kids are grown and out of the house, but it's this community where husbands for my daughters and wives for my sons and bosses for my children and grandchildren are going to come out of these schools. And I'm paying taxes into them, so I still have a vested interest in it, and I want to get involved. I want to take a stand. What would you urge them to do very practically to get started?
Number one, I want to remind every parent that you do not co-parent with the government. Number one. I also want to remind you that you have a responsibility of knowing what's in the curriculum. You need to know what are in the curriculum standards. It's imperative that every parent knows what the books that are being provided in the classroom are talking about, what they support. Parents need to go to the library and have a conversation with the librarian. And if you walk into the library and you see a pride flag, and you see a transgender flag, and you see a BLM flag, you are dealing with a woke public school. And parents have a right to go into the library of their school and to see what's in there. I've spoken to some woke librarians around the country, and you know what they tell me? They say that children have a right to see themselves on the bookshelves when they walk in. So if a child is dealing with gender dysphoria, they're confused, they're 8, the human brain doesn't really develop anyway until the age of 25. And someone's 8 in elementary school and, a guy thinks he's a girl. Should we play along with that and put a book on the shelf that supports that? Or should we make sure we redirect that child and get them the proper attention and help and assistance that they need? But today, these librarians have special interests. They know what they are doing. And so I say to people out there to get involved, get on the front lines. You can engage and know what's going on in your child's school.
John, how can people follow you and the work that you're doing if they want to do that, brother?
Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at REVWU Truth. That's Rev Woo Truth. And if you would like to support my work, you can go to erased.book.com. That's ERACED book.com.
You're doing the Lord's work, man. Literally. Keep it up. All right. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You bet. We'll have him back for sure. I am sure this conversation hits home close to you, Todd.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is him and I am.
You've essentially been a public nuisance at your local school board for years, and nearly a one-man show.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that conversation?
Well, that's the ballgame. It would be entirely different if there were just 10. I identify with him greatly, but really, the people coming in, what can I do? The first thing you must do is that education is not something that you're supposed to be passive about and leave it to the so-called experts, nor the law. He just was escorted out by a police officer just for showing the people what everybody came to indoctrinate your children with. That's how absurd things are. And until you realize that's not expertise, that's insanity, game over. You don't have to be well-spoken or anything like that. You have to be pissed off is what you need to be. And you have to say, over my dead body.
Aaron?
Far too few people are legitimately pissed off. Now, we get our jollies off on social media in this bubble, but far too few people, they just roll their eyes. They don't have time for this. The forces that are trying to foist this ideology, all of the ills that we've seen them do, whether it's transgenderism or whether it's gender, they have time for this. Oh, they have a lot of time for this. They've been preparing for decades for this. So either make time. What's the Muse song? Knights of Sidonia. Don't waste your time, or time will waste you. That's what's going on here. And Todd is absolutely right. This is the whole ball game. It just takes a small, committed minority of people who are willing to put in the work, like John is doing.
But men must make up some of that minority. There must be men. It doesn't have to be a lot.
It must be the majority of the minority.
But there's got to be some men in there. Yeah, got to be some men.
Oh, we're in trouble. How'd you close the last segment? You talked about maybe we need to start asking about the people instead of the system. Mm-hmm. People just can't be bothered, Steve.